is up, the sky is red, no grey clouds inside your head.
Dave Stewart. Now, let's be honest about it. Dave Stewart, he knows what he's doing when it comes to music. We all love the Eurythmics, especially if we were there at the time. But that's the official Cricket World Cup song of 1999, released the day after England already had been eliminated from the competition. Oh dear. Alex Stewart and Gus Fraser of England up on their feet, dancing along. I'm pleased to see that. Leading them all is Andy Zaltzman. Andy?
Hello.
Tears in your eyes almost, it seems, at a sheer enjoyment of that song.
It's glorious as everything that cricket is about, particularly the red skies.
Indeed, and John Etheridge, a man who knows his pop music. John, would you like to give your marks out of 10 for that one?
Right, I remember the video of that song. It was a take on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I think the message was clear that you have to be a bit mad to like cricket.
It was a strange old event, wasn't it? I mean, we had the first three in this country, and then the last one of that run being 1983. A long wait then up until 1999, and to say that some of the things didn't go exactly to plan would be something of an understatement. We've already mentioned John there, John, a cricket correspondent of The Sun. Wisden recalls John writing of the time, "Let's get things fully in proportion. This was only the most catastrophic day ever for English cricket." Now, John, that's pretty strong stuff. I reckon if you tweeted that now, John, I reckon that would certainly be serious clickbait. I think it could even go viral around the world.
I always remember John saying something like wrote in the first Test match of a series that you should always keep your powder a little bit dry for later on, but you haven't kept much dry there.
Well, I mean, there's been a few contenders for the worst day ever, but I mean, the point was that it was a home World Cup. There wasn't going to be another World Cup for 20 years, which is now 20 years later, and this was a chance for England to spread the message about what a wonderful game cricket is, attract young people to the game, and they were knocked out, as we now know famously, before the official song was even released.
Never mind the official song, what about the official opening ceremony?
Well, that was obscured by smoke from the fireworks, wasn't it? I mean, the portents were not particularly encouraging. It was a pretty feeble opening ceremony at Lord's, and nobody could see what was going on anyway because of the smoke billowing across the ground. So not the most encouraging start.
I remember a couple of things about it. I mean, sat on the balcony or stood on the balcony watching it, and all of a sudden, two players Flintoff had a big pair of earrings in, and all of a sudden Neil Fairbrother had the back of his bat light blue, weren't they?
Yeah, you're right, actually. It was a shambles from start to finish. Don't worry about that. Won't beat about the bush. Ether probably got something right when he wrote what he did, but I played in 92, which was the best World Cup I played in, and it went gradually downhill, culminating in 2003.
But you were leading England in this, and I hope you don't mind, Alec. We are actually going to play a little bit of archive, and it won't be too long till we do that, following the Indian defeat. And the reason I want to do that is because, for all the age and wisdom and context that, we all now can put on things, it will illustrate, as leader of the country, we all know, and it's not a cliche for both you and Gus, putting that England shirt on meant an awful lot. And to hear that interview, I think, is worth hearing for how much it did mean to you at the time. How do you feel looking back now on that? There you were leading this England team, and how do you remember it?
I try to forget it, I'll be brutally honest. It was a shambles, and not just that tournament. And as I say, the opening ceremony probably summed up how we played and how the whole World Cup for England was. But it started before that. There's contract issues. Simon Pack, who was, what was his cricket operations manager or whatever like he was, he came to see me the afternoon before the first day of the first test in Brisbane, the Ashes, to start talking about contracts and things like that. So in a way that sums up, we're trying to win an Ashes series and compete in an Ashes series. He's trying to talk about something that's not going to happen for 5 months. And it didn't get any better, I'll be honest. We didn't get the squad that David Lloyd, the coach, and myself wanted. We didn't get the preparations that we wanted. And then we played like a team that wasn't going to qualify.
Yeah, I mean, one of your best players, Graham Thorpe, was fined £1,000, wasn't he, for refusing to go to a function before the thing had even started?
Yeah, exactly. Again, we wanted to train in Leicester because they were the best training facilities, net facilities at the time, but were told to go down to Canterbury, and Kent did everything that was asked of them, but we wanted Leicester. But it was no way did it feel like a home World Cup, because I know now they're meant to be neutral. Back then, when I played in previous World Cups, a home country did get favours. as in where they wanted to train, practice, etc. We didn't get that. But you can't hide behind it. We didn't play well
The
enough.
preparations were good. I mean, to prepare for a World Cup in May in
Sharjah.
England, we went to Sharjah and Lahore, which was just like. I mean, the pictures were identical, weren't they?
and again, but that sums it up, Kevin, because we should have been in England, getting used to English conditions, getting a head start on all the opposition, and as Gus said, it was just become ECB then, I think. Was
Yeah.
it still ECB?
But it was.
Send us out there, it's shambolic.
And you changed the opening pair the day before the tournament.
Yeah, the evening before, but yeah, Nick Knight got left out for the one-day specialist Nasser Hussain. And again, there was so much chaos going on that your thinking was a bit muddled. Would I do that again? To be fair, Nick hadn't actually set the world alight. He'd had a poor tour from memory to Australia. He hadn't actually strung a lot together. And we weren't playing well enough as a team. I remember talking to Bumble in the Lord's dressing room saying, what do you reckon? He said, well, what do you reckon? It was the original, well, what we've been doing hasn't worked or isn't working. And we went very, very left field. Nasser won't mind me saying, and if he does, I don't care. We picked him.
A pinch blocker.
Exactly. He got us behind the run rate early on and carried on that way. But no, it was just muddled thinking.
The conversations and the meetings we had in Sharjah and some of the things that were said there, I mean, I just remember sitting there, this was really happening. I mean, there was Goffey saying he's the David Beckham of cricket and he shouldn't be treated like this. Alan Mullally saying, oh, the media are on our side. And you're thinking, well, yeah, today they are, but tomorrow it's not going to be the case. And you're trying to negotiate with Lord McLaurin, who's been dealing with the unions for Tesco for years, and he's going to make short work of a load of cricketers that are feeling sorry for themselves.
We shouldn't have been put in that situation, but that's how it was back then. You know, nowadays it's Team England, the PCA, and it's well organised.
I think the good thing to come out of it, if you can deem a positive, is the fact it did bring the treatment of England players to a head. And I think the 90s was almost an era of... And before the 90s and the 80s, it was players lucky to be playing for England, England in control. From 2000 onward, it was players respected, admired, looked after, treated as valuable assets, which they were. And the 90s was almost that tug of war either way between the players. And as a consequence of that contract dispute, central contracts came in. And I think ever since, England players have been treated far more positively, and the whole thing has been far more positive.
Yeah, 100%.
So it was almost the moment when everything came to a head, which is not ideal.
The
2 months before a huge tournament.
The current players should thank Gus and me, really.
Well, at least you had a central contract for a couple of years. I never got one. That was my last game, the India game. Thanks. Move on,
goodbye.
Gus.
Let me just run through the names. Stewart, Ian Austin, Croft, Elam, Fairbrother, Flintoff, Fraser, Goff, Hick, Adam Hollyoak, Hussain, Knight, Mullally, Thorpe and Wells. That was the squad.
Yeah, and it wasn't a squad, as I say, that David Lloyd and myself wanted.
So you didn't get your squad?
No, we wanted
Well, that's why I was there, probably. Wasn't it?
No, you were always there. Don't worry about that. No, we wanted Chris Lewis, but we were told in no uncertain terms were we not allowed to consider him, which again was wrong. And I'd like to think the people who made that decision, in hindsight, would change their mind. I'm not saying if we had Chris Lewis, we'd have played better, but going into a tournament, you want your best players available, and Chris Lewis, we were not allowed to pick.
Andy Zaltzman's here for many good reasons. One of them is to just try and make as entertaining as you can, Andy, this rather puzzling setup for the competition, because it really did take some getting your head around, didn't it?
Well, the World Cup had expanded from the 8 teams that it was in the first 3 World Cups that took place in England, went up to 9 then for the 1992 World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, then up to 12 for a World Cup in 96 held in Asia. And that had been 2 groups of 6 going into the quarter-final. The problem was that made the group stage rather uncompetitive. It took 3 weeks to get rid of Zimbabwe, Kenya, Netherlands and the UAE. And so they came up with a Super 6 format. So the top 3 from each group of 6 would go into the Super 6, carrying the points over from their matches against the other 2 of the top 3. And in the event of a tiebreak, which happened in both groups, it would be decided on net run rate, which is what England ended up losing out on. England won 3 games convincingly and lost 2 games almost equally convincingly. And it came down to them and Zimbabwe on net run rate. Now, England had a better average runs per wicket with the bat and also with the ball than Zimbabwe, but in terms of scoring rates, they were not as good as Zimbabwe. So despite depending on how you measure it, they were playing better.
remember-
But
How did that happen? How did Zimbabwe end up doing so well?
They had a decent side, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, Neil Johnson, they lost the game, and Neil Johnson made a big 100 against the Aussies at Lords in one of the games, for example. So they had a decent side, actually.
We messed up run rates, though. We
played, was it Kenya at Canterbury?
I messed up as well. So it just shows. I slogged one in the air at the end of the game at the Oval against South Africa when we had about 7 or 8 overs to bat, and you could have got another 10 or 15 runs by just pushing it around.
I
a bit.
won't blame you on that. But
Well,
on a serious note, Canterbury, it was Kenya, wasn't it? We played.
Yeah.
That's where we messed up. And again, it shows attention to detail back then is nothing compared to how it is
absolutely.
now. It was about winning the game, and the last, I'm guessing here, 25 runs took forever. Instead of knocking them off as quickly as possible, people turned it into a bit of a net, get a bit of centre wicket practice instead of just winning the game convincingly with the run rate being taken into consideration. But we didn't do that. So again, lack of attention to detail.
England's 3 victories were by 8 wickets against Sri Lanka, by 9 wickets against Kenya, then by 7 wickets against Zimbabwe. But when you look at the individual players' run rates through the tournament, of the top 50 run rates by batsmen, only Graham Thorpe was in the top 50 for England, and he was 44th with a run rate, strike rate of 69 per 100 balls.
Whoever says we're behind in white ball cricket?
Well, can I take you to Birmingham, May the 29th and 30th, because this game went into a reserve day, didn't it? England versus India. Now, pretty much you were going into that game thinking Super 6 place is going to be fine. As Zimbabwe beat South Africa, that made it all just a little bit awkward. But what are your memories of the game against India? Firstly, Alec.
It's like playing in Mumbai. As soon as you walked out there, it seemed as though it was 80-90% Indian fans. The noise levels when we went out were big, and then when the 2 openers for India went out there, the place erupted. So that didn't help. And then they outplayed us. Simple as there was a couple of dubious decisions that went against us. Graham Thorpe got a horrendous LBW.
It was an umpire called Javed Akhtar who'd given some very eccentric decisions the previous year in a test match at Headingley.
Exactly.
No, they were plumb.
We thought they were, didn't they? But we didn't play well enough, and that's just being brutally honest. Things yet did go against us, whether it's decisions, etc. But when you don't play well enough, you shouldn't feel too sorry for yourself. You just got to take it on the chin. And that's basically what we had to do.
So India scored 232 for 8 off their 50 overs, and England 169 all out after 45.2 overs. Alec, I hope, as I said earlier, you don't mind listening to this. You don't have to.
I'll look
but
forward to it.
I think this is an illustration, quite clearly, of everything, the build-up, what's been going on in the tournament, to how you
Can
felt
you remember this, Stuart?
following. It'd be interesting to see what Alec thinks of this afterwards. Talking to our very good friend, Pat Murphy.
Obviously hugely disappointed. Went into the tournament with the idea of winning it, and we've been knocked out at the first stage.
Did you expect this?
Obviously not. No, we'd won 3 games, and we knew if we put in a good performance here, we'd be going into the Super Sixes. Unfortunately, we got outplayed. We bowled and fielded well, but the batting wasn't up for it.
There was a contentious LBW decision. Graham Thorpe made it quite clearly he disapproved of the decision.
Yeah, look, the umpire's there to do his job. I'm not allowed to comment on umpires' decisions due to ICC regulations. You saw it, you can make the comments.
Winning the toss, making the decision you did to bowl first. Any regrets on that?
No, not at all. The ball moved around. We beat the outside edge on numerous occasions. The wicket was damp. It was the right decision. But as I say, it's the batting that let us down, not the bowling or fielding or the toss.
Alec, where does this rank in disappointments for you in your career?
Well, I lost in the final in Melbourne in '92, and I said then that was the biggest disappointment. The way I'm feeling now is on a similar level.
I understand there's been tears in the dressing room, more than 1 or 2 players.
Yeah, I haven't been looking around to see who's crying or who isn't, but we're all gutted.
I presume that was you, Gus, was it? Floods of tears, unable to cope, keep your emotions in?
Yeah, well, all I know is I was at the other end when, I'd like Alec, the noise out there was like playing in India. It was just high-pitched, sort of constant sound, especially when sort of Tendulkar was out there. And the second morning we came back, and again it was absolutely packed, the ground, and it was just even the sort of 2,000 or 3,000 England supporters that might have been there on the first day, they've had their tickets bought by Indians, so it was like an away match. And I was at the non-strikers end, I'd faced one ball from Srinath and he was quick. I mean, he hit me on the pads before I moved. Thought it was going down the leg side, but I was at the non-strikers end when Alan Manali had his 2 stumps knocked out of the ground, and that was the end of the tournament. It was my last ever day as an England cricketer as well. So
I didn't remember that.
Was it your last day as captain? Last match as captain, Alec, was it?
Yeah. So again, I'd been appointed until the end of that World Cup, and then David Graveney took about 3 weeks to tell me I wasn't going to be captain, even though everyone else knew I wouldn't be captain. And that was me done. And Nasser took over.
And Bumble finished as coach as well. Was Bumble always going to go?
Yeah. So Bumble was not being offered an extension, and he needed security, quite rightly so. And then Sky had obviously come in for his services. Sky had come in for his services.
he was on a couple of yellow cards by then, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was, wasn't he? So the coach got moved on, the captain got moved on, the physio got moved on, and the chairman of selectors stayed.
So you've got over it anyway, Stu.
Yeah, I'm not bitter at all, am I?
Just a quick word from you, Alec. When you hear interviews back there, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You were putting on a very professional, as you nearly always have done, as far as I'm aware. But that was hurting, wasn't it? That's so clear to hear that.
100%.
High pitched and clipped there, weren't you, compared to now?
I hated losing anything, but especially when you're captain, you feel success and failure even more. And it was a World Cup that, on your home territory, you're wanting to do well. There's high expectation, and we didn't get close to reaching the levels we were probably capable of doing. And I just keep saying,
it was humiliating, wasn't it? It was humiliating, really.
Well, we went back and played county cricket.
Yeah, 2 days later you were playing.
Yeah, you had to play county cricket, and then you were watching the rest of the world play some very good cricket.
And John, the media, as always, its usual supportive self.
Well, Alec was very diplomatic there, wasn't he? How disappointed he was now, 20 years on. It's a shambles from start to finish, his memories of the tournament. So it would have been better quotes if he'd said that at the time, really. But very, very
I might never have played for England again.
But of course, that summer got worse in many ways, because England played New Zealand, and then, of course, famously Nasser was booed on the at the Oval of the sort of presentation ceremony. England lost.
That was just by Surrey.
That was, but Duncan Fletcher came in as coach, and I think that summer of '99 was a real low point. But from then, I think things did improve. I mean, England, Nasser came in, and Fletcher, I think, did a good job, didn't he? Generally. And things started to improve. Central contracts came in the following summer, as Gus has already said, and I think it was probably a low point, but in some respects, the summer of '99 was a bit of a watershed, a bit of a turning point.
It was. So much was learnt from that. The arrival of Duncan Fletcher was massive, and the arrival of Central Contracts was massive, and the Nasser Hussain Duncan Fletcher partnership was just what was needed at that time, and thankfully they were almost given free rein to do as they wanted.
But John, in terms of the World Cup, huge disappointment that England were out of it. It was very difficult to get hold of that very fine song from Dave Stewart. We know that because that then came out. But in terms of the tournament, by gum, did it give us probably one of the moments of international cricket. I mean, we had 2 games actually which were fascinating between Australia and South Africa. But what about the tied game? What can you remember of that, John?
Well, Shane Warne, really. I mean, Shane Warne had a poor tournament. I think he'd had a bit of an injury issue and so on, and he hadn't really done very much at all. But of course, when it came to the semi-final and then the final as well, he suddenly started taking loads of wickets. I mean, he transformed that game, I suppose. There were a couple of occasions when South Africa looked to be chasing their target pretty comfortably, but Warne came in and took 2 or 3 wickets in quick succession. And then, of course, the final over, and that famous photograph of the entire Australian team, and Alan Donald had dropped his bat, hadn't he? And his big run-out mix-up with Lance Klusener, and there's a famous photograph taken by a chap called Ross Kinnaird, I think, that showed all the players, all the umpires, everybody in one frame. So that was one of the greatest matches that any of us would have ever seen.
Teams had actually met in the Super Sixes in Leeds. Australia had beaten them by 5 wickets. That game was the game where supposedly Waugh had said, "Hirsch, you've just dropped the World Cup." Since, we believe that perhaps those words were never said. They'd actually played each other just a few days earlier. Andy Zaltzman, a time to turn to you as we head into these semi-finals, New Zealand versus Pakistan, and this tied game between Australia and South Africa. It really was very special, wasn't it, in terms of everything to do with the stats and to do with the game's history?
Yeah, there were a lot of stats flying around. Also, Australia had lost to New Zealand by 5 wickets and to Pakistan already in the tournament. And from then on, they didn't lose for another 33 World Cup matches until 2011. So it was the start of a period of Australian domination. In terms of the tournament as a whole, it was a bowler-dominated tournament, but we're starting to see more and more teams use attacking batsmen at the top of the order. Gilchrist had come in for Australia, didn't have a massively successful tournament. And then Klusner, player of the tournament, 17 wickets, averaged 20, and 281 runs with a strike rate of 122 and only out twice. And yet it was arguably his mistake that cost South Africa a likely World Cup victory.
3 balls left, 1 to win. Fleming in and bowls. Klusner hits back past the bowler. There's a mix-up. Oh, there could be a run-out. There will be a run-out. It's a tie. Australia is in the final. Australia is in an unprecedented 4th World Cup final after an unbelievable tie at Edgbaston. Donald has been run out after an incredible, impossible to describe mix-up. South Africa all out, 213. The match is tied, and Australia go to Lords and the final.
As has been mentioned before, the England players perhaps back with their counters. Were you able to watch or listen to this, either of you, Alec or Gus?
Yeah, we were just saying off air then. We both watched it. We can't actually remember where we were, whether it was after a day's play or whether we were in a hotel bar. But I remember watching it. I was actually hoping that South Africa were going to get over the line. I'm not a great fan of seeing Australia win.
And could you believe what you were seeing?
No, it was...
It was one of those ones where you stood there and think, what they done that for? I mean, there's 2 balls left. Klusner's smacking it everywhere. And all of a sudden you've run he's going to hit the ball in the gaps somewhere. I mean, if you do that, you do it last ball. You don't do it with 2 balls still to go. So it was just complete.
Just shows
by the South Africans. I mean, I'm trying to remember who was at fault. Was it? I think it was Donald.
He just ran
and he dropped his bat, I think, didn't he?
Yeah. It's just when you're under pressure, I don't like that word, but there's that expectation, how muddled thinking does come in, and that's a perfect example of how not to stay cool and in control of what you're doing.
And if we talk of 99 and England perhaps trying to improve things after that, from a South African point of view, John, I mean, this has continued to haunt them a little, hasn't it?
Yeah, they've sort of developed a reputation for chokers in global tournaments, and they've had some magnificent players down the years, but De Villiers and Steyn and these kind of guys. But the number of tournaments they've won, well, it's non-existent, isn't it? I mean, they had in a subsequent World Cup there was a drama with the Duckworth Lewis, wasn't there?
Durban,
when they played
Sean
at home.
Pollock, wasn't it?
Sean Pollock, yeah. So, whether it's a fair label to have, but they certainly have got that label to an extent of being chokers.
They had been the dominant team in one-day international cricket since the previous World Cup in 1996. They'd won 57 and lost 16 in between the 2 World Cups. Australia were roughly about 50-50 win-loss. So South Africa had been very much the dominant side, and had probably been the strongest side through the tournament as well until those 4 fateful minutes.
Pakistan had beaten New Zealand in the other semi-final by 9 wickets. However, it was a bit one-sided, to say the least. Clear memory of that, John? I'm sure you were there covering that one.
Well, I was. Actually, it was one of the great moments of the World Cup was Shoaib Akhtar's Yorker to Stephen Fleming. Do you remember that? I think round the wicket, bowled at 90 miles an hour, probably 95 miles an hour, and just shattered his stumps. That was one of the most dramatic single deliveries that Shoaib Akhtar at that stage was seriously quick.
He was one of these superstars of the tournament of world cricket at that stage. But in terms of the final itself, Australia-Pakistan, very one-sided. It was over in no time at all. Just a quick look at the scores. Pakistan all out for 132 after 39 overs, and Australia got there, and they got there in good time as well after 20.1 overs. Gus?
I went to that, so I got into that. And I just remember the flats outside Lords being redeveloped at that moment in time, that new block sort of behind the tavern stand, and it was just sort of scaffolded in with sort of concrete, so there was nothing filled in. And obviously Pakistan fans had sort of found a way in, and there were hundreds of them on the top of this roof. Looking into Lords to
pass
watch
health
the
and safety.
No, and I think it was one of those situations, because it's risky, isn't it, where people are going up there saying you're not allowed to be up there. But if you create a state of panic when people are 15 floors up or whatever it was, who knows what happened. But I just remember that. I mean, the game was all over, wasn't it? It was a non-event.
Yeah.
Alec and Gus, thank you very much, because you say it wasn't the highlight of your career, was it?
No, it's really nice to have gone through that again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.
It was the end of mine. No, I do look back at it fondly. I mean, I enjoyed the prep. I know there was the sort of argument about the contracts, but the preparation we had, the sort of being almost like a touring side in England together for 2 or 3 weeks, preparing at a ground. I really enjoyed that sort of the togetherness that was done there, and it's great to have played in the World Cup, even though obviously it wasn't particularly successful. But it was my only World Cup, and so to have taken part in it, taken 1 wicket. I think it was Alistair Campbell. I think caught behind. That was my only World Cup wicket. But to have played 2 or 3, I think 3 games, and my last over, I think, was a maiden to Sachin Tendulkar in the Birmingham game. So remember some positive things about it anyway.
Well, Alec, Gus, John and Andy, any more stats to throw at it, just to round off the series? Give us a stat.
To highlight, it was very much a bowler's tournament. Batsmen collectively averaged 25, the second lowest after the 1979 World Cup. Runs per over just under 4.5, and it's gone up every single World Cup since then, up to 5.6 per over in the 2015 World Cup. So again, it was a time when one-day cricket started evolving rapidly. Again, it might not have been a great World Cup for England, but it was a superb World Cup for fans of extras. They clamped down on wides, and as a result of which, I think it was about 1,400 runs scored in wides and no balls. There was a wide around about every 24 deliveries was a wide, and over 11% of the runs in the tournament were scored in extras. So if you're a fan of extras, it was the World Cup.
Who was the worst side? You haven't got who was the worst side for that.
Stewie.